This is our last program for the summer. We don't want to compete against summer vacations and weather and church festivals and all that good stuff. So we're taking off for the next 2 months. So tonight's presenter, you guys already know, Alan. I guess the only other thing that you don't know is maybe that he's written a book about his presentation that he's going to do tonight. So I'll hand it over to Alan to talk about Cincinnati police stations.
Well, Dan's much taller than me. I gotta pull this down here. Let's kill the lights here on the screen. Oh, thank you. Is that visible? You can see it? Come to the front row then. I guess I tend to move around a lot when I talk, but this microphone might keep me here. So, Cincinnati Police Stations. This building here is where I started my career with Cincinnati Police, December of 1981. It's where I ended my career in January of 2015.
District 4?
District 4. So when you're talking about Cincinnati police stations, one of the questions people ask is, where was the first police station? I like to say it was Fort Washington, because the soldiers of Fort Washington, even before Ohio was a state, a year after Cincinnati was made into a city, Losanaville, this fort was built and the soldiers were responsible for keeping the order in the village of Losanaville and later Cincinnati. If you look in the mountain there, Ray gave me this cool laser. The mountain in the background at the time was known as Mount Ida. Several decades later, it became known as Mount Adams. So this was close to the river, and actually the front here, oops, I gotta get used to the laser. Front there, that's actually facing the river, and this side here, you see, this is separate from the rest of the fort. That's the powder magazine, and if you go downtown on Broadway, where the Western Southern Garage is, there's a bronze plaque on the side that says this is where the powder magazine for Fort Washington was. So now you know the rest of the story of how that fort was oriented. We want to talk about the current police stations first, then we'll go back and talk about police stations that are still standing but not used by the police department. And then after that, you'll see some police stations that are remembered only through photographs. So this is District 1 down on Ezra Charles Drive, which started as Lincoln Park Drive. Most of you know that. When the building was first put up in 1955, it was a 2-story building. It was designed actually to take as many as 5 floors. They thought about putting the courts, municipal courts there, and even the jail there. That did not happen. However, they did add a 3rd floor in 1970 when police officers started carrying radios on their belt. So the police communications, previous to that was in Eden Park, known as Station X. They put on this 3rd floor. The police and telephone and radio communications was there. If you notice right in front here, across from the police station, there's the police memorial. There's an eternal flame in the name of every law enforcement officer who has given his life protecting the community in the greater Cincinnati area is memorialized on those plaques. It's really worth a visit. District 2, built in 1950. It's on Erie Avenue, 3295 Erie Avenue, and you can see the more modern picture of it here. Set about in trees. It's in Hyde Park. It's a nice, peaceful, park-like setting. It's on this wide, sweeping bend of Erie Avenue. There's not a lot of off-street parking for employees, so cops are parked on that bend. First, they have to play Frogger to get across the street without getting hit. And secondly, about once a year, it seems the cop's car gets hit by traffic. District 2 was remodeled. First, it started as District 6. Forgot to tell you that. It started as District 6 when it opened. And in 1976, it became District 2 in an organizational restructuring. You've probably heard about a similar sort of thing going on now. You'll hear more about that later. District 3. How many of you have seen this building? It's the West Side Police Station for Cincinnati. 3500 Ferguson Road, opened June 15th. The actual date it was supposed to be dedicated was June 19th of 2015. They didn't do it. That was the day Sonny Kim was assassinated in Madisonville. They postponed the dedication for 2 weeks. There's a community meeting room there. It is LEED compliant. That means it is energy efficient. It's actually net zero. It produces as much energy as it uses, recycles much of the rainwater it gets. It is the first LEED compliant police station in the United States. And if you notice these columns out front, there's 14 columns. Each one represents one of the 14 communities that are served by District 3 for now. If you've heard about District 5 being eliminated and District 3 is picking up about 3 or 4 communities, I wonder if they're going to put up new columns for them. District 4. Architectural drawing on the left looks very nice, set about with the trees. The reality, it's a concrete bunker. There are no windows facing Reading Road. There are actually some windows on the back that overlooks Victory Parkway, but there's no windows facing front. Designed in the mid-1970s, shortly after the civil rights riots that were held throughout the country, particularly in Avondale, just 2 miles south of here, in 68 and 67. So yeah, it does look like a bunker, and I've thought if there was going to be an earthquake, I would be very comfortable in there. In the basement, well actually underneath the, this is parking for the police officers, and this area is parking for guests. And I don't mean the guests that get taken in handcuffs. So in the basement below there are, I think it's 14 jail cells. It's all concrete. And the Civil Liberties Union in the early 1980s said, you have a jail, so you have to provide food service, recreation, all kinds of other stuff. So the city said, we're going to stop having jail cells in all of our police stations. So now they're storage closets with steel toilets and bunks. District 5, this is the district you've been hearing about in the news in the last couple of years. Currently, it is a strip mall, retail storefront, and that was opened in the 1990s. This photo was taken just a couple of years ago. It's been temporary since 2018, when the city of Cincinnati decided to move there to get out of the old District 5 on Ludlow Avenue. The state of Ohio actually waived some of the requirements to make it a proper police station. After 3 years, the city committed a couple $1 million to restore it, and now they're going to completely eliminate it. It is not a good location for a police station. The central business section, if you've ever gone down to the ballpark, the Reds ballpark, or the Holy Grail, this is just a few doors away. When the Banks was really coming up with the Freedom Center and the ballpark and everything, they said, we need a police presence down there. But they wanted to make it tourist friendly. So it was actually first created as a welcome center, staffed by police officers. And if you can see it, it actually says welcome center right there. And there were restrooms visiting guests could use. And it was supposed to be a place you could stop and get information. I don't think it's being used that way too much anymore. The cops there are awfully busy. The Central Business District was created to manage all the big events that happen, from the fireworks to the ball games, football games, other events. You know, our riverfront's a busy place. So these are the guys that coordinate and plan all the personnel needs and other aspects of those operations. The Glass House. Any of you seen this? Built in 1972. Steve, yes, I know you have. It's the police department bought it in early 2015. The chief then said, I want to put my headquarters, my office, on the 6th floor. And they ended up buying it. Did not work out. So there is our criminal investigation sections there, our records unit there, our central repository for all reports that we make. And in the basement, there is the property room and the evidence room. If a police officer takes in evidence and he's going to need it for court, that is where it's stored so we can say it's safe and the chain of custody is all recorded. The Police Academy, 800 Evans Street. This property was built as the Bengals Training Center at Spinney Field. Spinney Field was a recreational facility owned by the city. There was a ballpark there, there's a football field there. There still is. It was converted to the Police Academy in the year 2000. That was all part of the stadium deal. The Bengals got the new stadium, we got a used building. It's actually a pretty nice police academy. Our recruiting and background investigation unit is there because they work hand in hand with the police academy staff. Also, our supply unit is there. The Cincinnati Police Department was one of the first police departments to have a police academy. Originally, it was held in City Hall, then it was moved to the 314 Broadway, you'll see that later on. Went to Cincinnati State for a long time, and I graduated from there. And then it went to Longworth Hall, which is that big red brick building, parallels the river, and it's just west of the Bengals Stadium. So this is the permanent home. Special Services section. Who has seen this building? We're West Siders. This is 3201 Warsaw Avenue. This is the longest used building in Cincinnati Police Department. Opened December 31st, 2008. It has been continuously used as a police station ever since. Opened as District 9. At one time, there were 10 districts in the city police department. So we have gone through some restructurings over the years. Became District 3 in 1927. It was actually, when it opened, it was District 9 and Patrol 9. For a while, Patrol 5 was in there. We'll talk about patrol houses later. Became Special Services Unit in 2017. In the background, you can see the library there too. So existing station houses and other facilities that are still standing but no longer police stations. Who knows what this building is? City Hall, that's right. The police department played a major role in the size and design of this building. And this is something I just learned in the last couple of months. Originally, the first City Hall, built in 1853, this is West 9th Street, this is Plum here. You can see 8th Street and Central Avenue. This is the block the current City Hall occupies. But the 1853 City Hall only covered about a fifth of it. The rest of it was a nice park, walkways, trees, the fountain in the center. Retail offices here. This was Waterworks office here. Eventually, these became lawyers' offices and became the police court. The police department occupied this northern part that was called the 1st District Central Station, and the police court was there, the chief's office was there. 30 years after this place was built, it was starting to crumble. By 1884, they said, we need a new city hall. So the city father said, we'll just build a new one here in this park space. And the police said, what do you want to do with us? Because it's just going to be half. It's not going to use the whole thing, just use half the park. And the police department said, we'll just rehab this old falling down place for you. And so 4 congressmen, state congressmen in Ohio from Hamilton County, one of whom was named Al Call, and that's been a name that's been in Cincinnati for years. This is in 1888. They went to Columbus, they found another $250,000, and they said, the police department needs to have half of this building. So that's the City Hall today, and it is a mirror image of itself. The front here on Plum Street, this is the entrance, says City Hall. All of this here was added to accommodate the police department. And the police department filled it up. So half this building was designed for the police department. The only difference between the front on Plum Street and the front on Central is the clock tower or bell tower. Other than that, they're identical. And if you have any doubts, if you look at the Central Avenue entrance, overhead, there is a cut in stone Cincinnati police badge. Still there. You can't go in that way anymore. You have to go in through Plum Street. This was a complete police headquarters. On the 3rd floor, there was a gymnasium, said to be the model or the standard for police gymnasiums in the country. You can see they could do gymnastics here. There was a running track, probably about 1/12 mile. Police officers were encouraged, though not required, to keep fit. The 2nd District, now you've probably seen this. This is 314 Broadway. This photo is from 1957. Life magazine came to Cincinnati. It was doing a 3-part series on crime in America. And part 2 was the model police force for the nation. That was Cincinnati. It was the model police force. Cover photo, you see the police chief there standing in the communications room and a map in the background. So there was a great treasure trove of photographs of Cincinnati PD from 1957. We were lucky enough to find these. You can't find them on there anymore, but we've downloaded them all. And if you see here, this is the western southern garage, and as I mentioned before, this is where the Fort Washington fort was. This is the way it looks today. This was one of the first combined districts and patrol houses. Built in 1911, the first Cincinnati police car came around in 1909. Before then, all the patrol wagons were horse-drawn wagons. Cincinnati was the second police department in the country to use patrol wagon service. On the side here, this is Arch Street. It's a little alley, but that's where the entrance to the patrol wagon was. So this was a motorized patrol wagon, and the patrolman would pull the wagon into the side, discharge the prisoner, and rather than backing out for the next run, they had a turntable inside. We don't know how it was operated, if it was hand operated, could have been electrical at that time. There were certainly electrical motors. It may have been steam, we don't know. In the basement, as many police stations had, there was a target range. This eventually became home to the police academy from 1927 to about 1970.
Didn't ASAP use that?
What's that?
Didn't ASAP use that?
When traffic section moved in, yes. Alcohol Safety Action Program, very good.
There was a lot of cars out of there.
So the Bremen Street Station, this was the third district. So the second district was on Broadway. Actually, there's one before that. So this is the third district, Bremen Street. Anybody know where Bremen Street is? Dan, I know you know. It's Republic Street. In the anti-German craze of World War I, all these streets in Cincinnati that had German names, Bremen, which is a big industrial city in Germany, Bremen became Republic Street. Down in the 8th and State area, German Street became English Street. There are several others. So here's a map. It shows there's the German Lutheran Church here, so it's a very German neighborhood. And I don't know if you can read the tiny writing in there. It says cells. So this is a Sanborn fire map, and this is to help firefighters know what they've got to deal with. And if you've got jail cells, you may have to go in and rescue people who can't get out on their own. The photo on the left, that's a 1930 photograph of the building when it was the home for the Kolping Society. That is a German social group, and I find it ironic that the Kolping Society moved on to the former Bremen Street. Kolping Society now has a huge facility out in Springfield Township, and I think they're having their Schützenfest this weekend. That's always a great time. This is what Bremen Street looks like today. 1523 Republic Street, built in 1870. This is the oldest standing Cincinnati police station. It hasn't been used as a police station since 1901, when a new third district was opened. 2 years after that, it became a public bathhouse, because there was a lot of people that did not have baths or showers at home. And if you read some newspaper articles after this became a bathhouse, they talk about the reduction of disease in the area. I wonder why. District 4, if you've ever driven through Carthage on Vine Street, you've seen this building. This holds two distinctions in Cincinnati public safety history. That was a 1970s era photo. The picture up above came from a 1913 annual report. That is a fire truck. This was built as quarters for Engine Company 48, the first motorized fire station in the city of Cincinnati. The other first is that, as you can see, it is a one-story building. Firehouses are usually 2 stories, not necessarily to house the firefighters, but so they can drag the hoses up to the top of the tower and let the water drain out. That's the way they keep the hoses from getting rotten and moldy. So the way this system was worked, they actually worked on an incline. By 1955, it became District 4 when the Engine Company 48 got its different quarters in Carthage. It served as District 4 for 20 years, and then the District 4 that I showed you at the beginning opened in 1975. It's been a medical office, it's been a preschool, recreation center. I found a lot of former police stations have been used by the city as recreation centers over the years. District 5, we've all heard about this lately. It was actually built as a police station, and I'll show you proof about that at the end of the program, resembles a park lodge because it sits in the foothills of Mount Storm Park. Opened in December of '57. We moved out in 2018 because there were some health concerns. A lot of police officers who had been working there were coming down with cancer. There was OSHA and there was a couple other organizations, they did studies. They could not find any direct correlation to that building and the cancer incidents. Nonetheless, the city moved us out. It is owned by the park board. I stopped by there about 2 weeks ago, and it is being renovated as an office building for the park. So clearly, they're not concerned about the health scare. District 6. Has anybody been in this building? It's the precinct now. Built in 1901 as a patrol house. And again, you can see the wagon entrance. Oops, how do I do that? There's the wagon entrance there. This is on Delta Avenue. This is Columbia Avenue, became Columbia Parkway. And there's the turret. I love the style. This is a Hannaford building. It was actually the second patrol building. We don't, District 6 patrol. We don't know where the first one was. It was somewhere in the area. We haven't nailed that down yet. Became District 6 in 1948. District 6, the actual police station, was around the corner, and it was falling apart by 1948. So they moved out. They knew they were building the new one on Erie Avenue, and this was the temporary quarters for District 6 from 48 to 50. Then they moved on to Erie Avenue. Became the precinct in 1981, and there was a restaurant there before that. It was called Amanda's, and it was a private club. You had to have a membership to go in. That lasted for a couple years, but the second floor, there was still a dance club, and you had to be a member to go up there. There was a suspicious fire there, and that killed Amanda's. Ruby opened it in '81. California substation. I'm a big fan of substations if they're monitored right. The police department got big into them as they were annexing new properties. When they annexed the California area, they didn't want to build a whole new police station, so they thought a small substation, a couple officers could be stationed there. And so we've always heard about the Kellogg Avenue substation, but we didn't have any photos. The city of Cincinnati, their highway maintenance department did a great job of documenting the work they've done from the mid-1920s to the mid-1950s. And so you're looking at roads all the time, but you never know what's on the roadside. Kellogg Avenue is a dirt road in 1927. At the intersection of Kellogg and El Dorado, that's where the substation is supposed to be. I saw this photo after digging for a couple hours, and that is it. You probably can't see it here, but it says 6th Dist Police Substation. So this was the District 6 Police Substation. This is where the patrol wagon backed up to it, did not back into it. The owner of the place now is the barbecue. It's called Pig Candy Barbecue. And when I stopped in and talked to them, great guys. I've not eaten there yet. Have you eaten there yet, Dan?
Yeah, it's
Delicious.
good. It's really good.
I've heard a lot of good things. He told me there used to be a jail cell in there. Would have loved to see photographs of the interior. Opened in 1913, the police department stopped using it in 24. Became a store, became a private residence most of the time, and they just renovated this a couple of years ago into the restaurant.
I think they have some tongue-in-cheek menu items related to pork and fleas.
Well, yeah, I asked him about that. Is that where the name came from, Pig Candy? And he says, oh no, that's kind of a name for barbecue in the field. But maybe he's just trying to save my feelings. Another substation. This one was acquired when Oakley was annexed. Oakley was its own village. And as many of the small municipalities would do, they would have a fire station and police or a marshal's office in the same building. You don't need two different buildings if you're a small city. So this is a postcard, and this identifies the firehouse, and this is the location of 3717 Madison. Became Engine 31, and it was also a District 6 substation as well, and it was last used as a police station, or substation 31. It is now the home of the Design Depot. This is an architectural firm that specializes in redoing and repurposing old buildings. I went in to talk to them. They're the ones that gave me this postcard. If you want to see it life-size, bigger than this screen, It's a great look. And they gave me a picture, a file of that. And I told them this had been a substation. They said, really? We didn't know that. We just redesigned one down on Kellogg Avenue. So they've redesigned 2 substations in the current buildings.
And it's right across from Aglemese's Ice Cream.
Right across, there you go. Dan would know that. The 7th district, as the city is expanding, if it's not annexing properties, it's just growing bigger. As it grew up on the hills, it had to put police stations up on the hills. This is a 2401 Concord Avenue. That's a small street, runs north-south off of McMillan, runs south off of McMillan, kind of in the West Walnut Hills area. Opened in 1874. And we'll see a couple of other stations built in the 1870s. They'll have a fairly similar design. There's a sandstone over the doorway, and it says 7th District Police Department. It is so weather-worn, you can barely read it. I took this photograph several years ago, and the owners came out. Now imagine if you own a property and a uniformed police officer with the marked police cars taking a photograph of your house. What do you think? Is everything all right? Yeah, I just know it's an old police station. They were very generous. They invited me to come and tour the place. It was a mess. They've been renovating it. I would like to see what it looks like now. There's no jail cells or anything. But they said that the previous owners told them that this was once the party house and not recording, but practice studio for the band Pure Prairie League in the 1970s. I've never been able to prove that, but I would love to. This replaced the Concord Avenue station that you just saw. This is the 7th District, District 7 on Beecher Street in Walnut Hills, designed to fit in. That a lot of these police stations were designed to fit into the neighborhood. When this opened in 1930, the Cincinnati Post said it has the feel of a Spanish hacienda with gleaming wood floors. The turret had a circular staircase to go to the 2nd floor where there were dormitories. A lot of police stations of the era had dormitories on the 2nd floor for police officers to stay in case there were riots because they couldn't get home. Also, there was locker rooms and showers there. The black and white drawing you saw actually appeared in the Post. This photo is actually from 2012. It's been a Head Start or child care facility for many years now. They stopped using this in 1975 when District 4 in Carthage and District 7, this building, combined to make the District 4 on Reading Road. So we've been, yes?
I was gonna ask you, didn't District 7 move to District 4 in that building?
Yes, yeah, they combined. So they eliminated District 7
Yeah.
and they just called it District 4.
District 7 used to have the fastest undercover car.
Tell me about that later. I'd like to hear more about that. When I started in District 4 in 1981, a lot of the old guys from District 7 were there, and they were telling me stories after I got off probation
They're all true.
about what happened in District 7. These are 3 purpose-built substations built by the city of Cincinnati in 1913. They opened in 1914. I call them the 3 sisters because they were all the same architecture.
Well, that's right.
And let's see, this one is 5110 Wetzel in Madisonville. That was the 7th district. This one,
That's fighting 50s.
that's the 50s, that's right. Parkland and Twain in Sarah Park.
Fighting 50.
And this was the house on Marlowe, which was the 51s.
That top one on the left, was that the 49s also?
It was never a firehouse.
Really?
And that's what I want to point out to you, because that's a good segue. If you look at the roof line here, this has a peak, and the little crenellations there are exposed. Here it is a flat facade all the way across. When these 2 became fire stations in the 1920s, for some reason the fire department decided to make it a straight line. I think because they just sleep at work anyway, and they needed something to do besides make chili and wash fire trucks.
I never watched a fire truck.
But that's a
They never
policeman's.
turned the wheel.
Never turned the wheel. This is the 50s. This is the Parkland station right before it opened from a newspaper article, and you see it has the same roof line there, as does the 51s on Marlowe. This is from a annual report 1914. They're showing it being constructed. So the police department, they like this cool roof line. Of course, you have the flagpole attached to the building. All 3 were the same at one time. But now, Wetzel is vacant. When it was first sold in 1927, a pastor bought it, and a couple of years later sold it to his church. It became a American Legion Hall, became a Masonic Lodge. In the 1950s to the 80s, it was a bar called the Hut, and it was a trouble place. You look for stories about the Hut, and there's a lot of them in there. 1987, it was vacant and unused, and the Cincinnati Enquirer referred to it as an urban scar. It's vacant now. There's empty lots on either side. I think that would be a great place to put the police museum.
They need something bigger than what it's got.
The 8th District, 2616 Short Vine, that's up in Corryville. We always knew that there had been a police station there, but we figured it was gone because Corryville had gone through a lot of renovations. But we started digging, especially since we had an address. Found this article in the Post, and was, which district is the most peaceful? And it was the 8th District. And if you look, I love this. A lot of the buildings are there. That's a city seal in stone. It's got a great roof line here, some arches over the windows. There's the same building. It still stands today. It's in Corryville, right across, what's the name of that theater? Bogarts, right across the street from Bogarts. It's a real estate rental or management property. When the 8th District was sold by the city of Cincinnati in 1927, there was a huge restructuring. They went from 10 districts to 7. So they got rid of a lot of the districts. The second and third floor were made into a couple of efficiency apartments. The first floor ended up being a bank, and later on was a savings and loan. I think it was called the North Savings and Loan for many years. And it's now owned by this ES Properties. I went in there to talk to them about this, and they had no idea that it had been a police station at one time. Patrol 8. If you ever gone on McMillan Avenue at Ravine, you've seen this place. It was a recreation center. It was a art center. This is another Samuel Hannaford building. Let's go back to this. So this is a patrol house at the top of Ravine Street. Oops, gotta push the right buttons. So this is where the patrol wagon went in. This is the front on McMillan. This is Ravine Street right here. Took this photo several years ago. Geez, that's probably about 10 years ago now. At that time, it was an Asian food market. But if you can see, the windows, the top parts of the windows have been filled in with stone. They're actually, that's artwork. When this was the Fairview Art Center in 1980, the director of the art center wanted to honor the police heritage of this building. And even though the sign on the front said Fairview Art Center, he wanted to honor them. So he created these 4 friezes or reliefs that showed police officers on their horses. The building is now a tattoo parlor. There is no sign on the front, so now you can see the truth. It really is the 8th District Patrol. We've seen this already. This is the Warsaw Avenue Station. Started as District 9, became District 3 in 1927. Here's the opening for the patrol wagon. There's a couple patrolmen here. When this was built, it housed 30 police officers and 15 horses. By the time District 3 moved out in 2015, 150 cops were assigned to it. There was actually overflow in the old fire station across the street where the investigators were. This photograph was honored by a recreation by the Police Museum on the centennial anniversary of the building. So you can see, instead of the wagon, you've got a couple different cars. You can't see it very well. There's an officer on a mountain bike and another one on a Segway. I don't know if they use Segways anymore. There's the district commander at the time, Kim Fries, and Steve Kramer, who is a great historian. He's the president of the Police Museum right now. So, buildings that are no longer in existence. How am I doing on time, Ray? He's asleep. So we talked about the Fort Washington being the first police station. In 1803, City of Cincinnati passed an ordinance to create a night watch because just before that there had been a terrible fire. It damaged a lot of the village. Most of it was wood. So they created a night watch, and every man 21 or older, had to take turns serving in the watch. So every night, 12 men would elect a captain. They would meet in some central location, perhaps at somebody's house, perhaps a tavern, which is just what you want, right? A bunch of cops going out patrolling, starting at a tavern. So from 1803, they were meeting in some central location. It was not a municipal building. By 1833, they had gone to a day watch, and they had become, rather than volunteers or conscripts, they were actually paid watchmen. So the city of Cincinnati actually had to have a watch house. We'd been looking for years to find it, and the answer was in the files found at the Cincinnati History Library and Archives at Union Terminal. This map is 1843, and this is a bit of an enlargement. This is one I usually get in front of. This is where Fort Washington was, so this is Broadway here. This is 3rd Street, and this building here was the mayor's office. On the 3rd floor was where the night watch was from 1833 to 1853, when they moved to the new City Hall. So that's where the night watch was. And this is the old City Hall, built in 1853. Before it was built, city offices were scattered throughout the city. They were renting property, so the landowners were getting rich off the city, and they said, we need a centralized location for all the city's offices. And they built this on that square of land. It's only on the western portion of that block. So you can see the park here, was in the city park, there was a fountain. You've got an omnibus being dragged, hauled by a horse. This photo is from a book in History of Cincinnati, 1875. So the police department, the chief's offices were here, police court was here, and the jails were in the basement, and was said to be a hellhole. There was no ventilation, and you read these stories about the early jails, they always talk about the smells. That was actually one of the nice things about the cells when they created the District 2 building on Broadway. They said, it's got great ventilation. Patrol 1. Now, the patrol service was started in Cincinnati, 1881. It was the second police department in the nation to have a patrol service. Chicago started it, St. Louis was shortly thereafter. A private citizen went to Chicago to study their system, and he said, Cincinnati needs that here. He bought a wagon, and he bought some horses, gave them to the city if they promised that we would adopt the system, and they did. Used as an ambulance, it was among the first ambulance corps in the United States. And the patrol wagon was used. You'd have a driver and 3 to 4 patrolmen, and if there was a riot or some other disorder, somebody could call. You think about 1880s. Telephone is still a very new thing, but they've got call boxes on the corners that police officers can use. They started out with telegraphs. By 1879, Cincinnati was the first police department in the country to adopt telephones. So the patrol house and district houses were connected by telephones. So we've always wondered where this was. This is a copy of a photograph, and you can't see the address here. It says 168 West 8th. If you look at a map today, at 168 West 8th, there's nothing but new buildings there. But then we started thinking, the streets were readdressed, what was it, 1890s? 1891, I think. So we found an older map. And this is that City Hall Park again. This is the old 1853 City Hall. And here, we'll enlarge that. It says Insurance Patrol. The first paid firefighters were actually insurance company employees, because when you bought an insurance policy, when they did not want to have to pay out on that, so they would have guys go out and fight fires. If you said, I got a fire at my house, they'd come and put it out. So there was insurance. So that is, and you really can't read, it's kind of faint here, 168 West 8th Street, right next to the livery stables. City Hall Park was right here. That was where that first Patrol 1 was. So that's a discovery I made just the last couple of weeks, thanks to Steve Kramer. He's a great researcher. This was the first Patrol 1 we knew that we had a photograph of. This is at 316 George Street. And how many of you were here for the Greg Hand program a week or so ago? He's talking about how George Street was where all the brothels were. So there was a police presence there as well. The first patrol house on George Street was built in 1888. It was devastated by a fire, not completely destroyed, but devastated. So they rebuilt it, and this is the building they put in. Here it says Police Patrol Number 1. I love the keystones in the archway over the entry. And windows here. Actually, this is doorway. This is 1938, circa 1938 photograph, and this is motorcycle. And it continued to be used as a police office until the 1950s. I figured there had to be another photograph of this patrol house. If you've ever gone to the auditor's website, on the landing page of the auditor's website, they've got some photographs of downtown buildings from 1968. So we started looking. And you can see, this is the book, plat, and parcel. And this is George Street here. This is the north side of it. This is the Cincinnati Bell building. But right here, I thought, that looks like George Patrol 1. Enlarge it a little bit, you cannot read it. But there's the same archway with keystone there, the arch is there. If you put it side by side with Patrol 1. So we know Patrol 1 on George Street still existed in 1968. We still don't know when it was taken down, but at least we have a second photograph. Patrol 2, this was a leased property, it was on McAllister Street. The street's just an alley now. It's on a property that's owned by Western Southern, north of where the Broadway station was. This is the superintendent of patrol here, and here is the station house dog. A lot of these station houses had pets, and if you want to see one, go to the police museum downtown. There's one of them. He was so beloved. When he died, they had him stuffed, and he's been stuffed for over 100 years, and he's now the greeter. His name is Hanson. Because he wasn't. Hammond Street Station. Since I began studying police stations in the last probably 10, 15 years, I always heard about the Hammond Street Station. It was the second district in the city of Cincinnati. Hammond Street is a small street, really doesn't exist anymore. And there have been 3 police stations there. There's only one that was a purpose-built police station that we've seen photographs of, 321 Hammond Street. And again, built in the 70s, that's 18, not 19. You can see there was the city seal here, got the arched doorways. This place had a reputation across the country. The basement was a flop house. Hobos and ne'er-do-wells and just the homeless would find refuge in this basement, particularly in bad weather. There's a Toledo, I don't know what newspaper it was, but a reporter from Toledo came to Cincinnati to do an article about this. He went in disguise as one of the homeless. They let him in at 11 o'clock. They shoo him out at 7 o'clock in the morning. And they herd him all down in the basement. And he's describing, they're gathering around the heat, the furnace. Some are real close to get the heat. Some are trying to get away from all the heat. And they're all trying to get away from each other. And again, he talks about the smell. When the police moved out of the Hammond Street Station in 1911, they moved to the Broadway station, which you saw at 314 Broadway. So it became an overnight place for homeless people for about 11 years. Then the Cincinnati Area Board of Real Estate bought it, and it was their clubhouse. And they refitted it with showers and dining rooms. It was a big to-do, and I contacted them several years ago. I said, would you happen to have a photograph? A 1922 magazine from the Ohio Board of Real Estate has this photo. So now we've got a better photograph of it. It's not perfect, but you can see the seal of Cincinnati here. And you see these doors where people go in. And I can just imagine the station house sergeant every night, or every morning, shooing the people out, get up, back out on the street. The 3rd district, this replaced the Bremen Street Station. This is on McMicken between Vine and Walnut. The building no longer exists. Grant Park and Pool are there now. This was proposed as the very first combination police district and patrol house. When they started the patrol service, the police districts were already established. So they started leasing places. Eventually they started building places. But they never put them together because the patrol service was actually a separate service within the police department. It was rapid response. And as the police got telephones and more citizens got telephones, it was part of the rapid response. So the communications and patrol were all part of one service, and the regular police officers were part of another. As the years went by, they said they worked together so much that really is all the police department. So they made this the first combined patrol house. The horses entered Back Street in the back. If you look at this drawing, there is actually a horse-drawn wagon here. Seal of Cincinnati here, there's the flag in the front. This building stopped being used as District 3 in 1927 when they moved to District 3 up on Forsyth Avenue. In the 1930s, it became an unemployment bureau for the city, later for the state, and sometime in the 1940s it was taken down. We don't know the exact date. This is the only image of this building that's known to exist. This came from the Enquirer when it opened up. The 4th District, this was on 5th Street, built 1893, and the stone lintel here, carved in stones, probably 2 feet tall. It says AD Police Station Number 4, 1893. Would love to have that piece of history. It was taken down in the 1950s for I-75 as part of this is part of the Kenyon Bar neighborhood down there. And this is its companion district, Patrol 4. Now this was actually 2 blocks west and a block south of the building you just saw, because it was the companion building for a previous 4th District, which is on 3rd and Mill. We have no images of that. This building was still around for a long time. It had the names of the police superintendents and the city fathers here, the councilman, the mayor, and everybody else that wants to take public credit for the building. That's the building. It's now on Lynn, well, it was on Lynn Street until about 9 years ago. It was right next door. This is part of the, it was a butternut bakery. They had a day-old bread store there. It was a big facility. It's all been raised. It's now part of the front lawn. I forget the name of it. It's basically a men's shelter now. About 401 Lynn Street. The 5th District on York Street, another Samuel Hannaford building. This was the first step in the combining of the patrol house and the district house. In the back here, that is Patrol 5. This address was 1024 York. That was 1025 York Alley. I love this big archway here. This is the interior of the building when it opened in 1896. Here's the foyer, and you can't see it very well here, but this is actually a seal of Cincinnati into the carved woodwork. You've got gas lights here. This is the squad room upstairs where the men have their locker rooms, and there's a restroom off to the side with showers. And one of the patrolmen was asked, he said, "What do you think of the place?" He said, "If you ever cannot find a police officer, go to the bathroom. It's the best bathroom in the city." And here, this is inside the patrol house. There's a wagon, there's 2 horses. I don't know which is which, but they were named Jenny and Maud. This is that archway. I say archway, every time I say archway, I think of cookies because I like archway cookies. So this is the arch over the doorway. This is 1980 or so. It was just before the building was taken down. It says Police Station Number 5. The city seal is very small. It's not nearly as prominent. And here it has the date 1896. This looks to be a gas fixture. I'm assuming there was the globe lights that said police. You've probably seen the archway there. It's at the corner of Lynn and Banks. It's now a gateway to the Dayton Street Historic District. We'll talk more about District 5 near the end. The 6th District on Eastern Avenue, this was another Hannaford building. He did not start the construction or the building of it, but he took over when the guy went broke doing it. So you see, this has 3 floors. When it was designed, the upstairs were not dormitories. They were apartments. Police officers were invited to rent and live there. Well, I don't know about you, but I would not want to live above a police station. They couldn't get any cops to rent the place, so citizens were allowed to rent. Apparently it was very friendly rates, and it had been reported that the city should find other apartments to rent too. Building came down, don't know exactly when, but there's a waterworks building on the site now. The 10th District. Cincinnati one time had as many as 10 districts. When they annexed the Cumminsville neighborhood in 1873, like they did so often, they would take over the marshal's office and make it a district station. And this is Ludlow Avenue here. It's not exactly where the same Ludlow Viaduct is now. It's been moved a little bit. This is the Mill Creek. The Ludlow Station, which we know on Ludlow Avenue, is about here. This is Spring Grove, and right about here is where the White Castle is. So this is where the first 10th district was. They just moved in, renovated it. And then in 1887, they moved to the Coleraine Hilton. This is the workhouse, built in 1868, another Hannaford design. Looks very much like the Ohio State Penitentiary. I've seen a photograph identifying this building as the Ohio State Penitentiary, but it is not. When the old mayor's office, or marshal's office at Spring Grove and Ludlow got too bad, they moved into the first floor. The 10th district was in the north wing, the first floor of the workhouse. Gave it the nickname of the workhouse district, and it stuck for as long as the 10th district was around. Second floor here was the women's hospital. Building came down in 1988, in 1990 rather. Staying there right now is the River City Correctional site. So there's been a jail there since 1868. So here's the building that replaced the 10th district there. This was a pre-existing patrol house built in 1893. This was built in 1906, and this part of Coleraine Avenue no longer exists. This was taken down in 1955 to make way for I-75. This part actually is basically under the ramp that goes from eastbound 74 to southbound 75. District 5 was in this building from 1931 to 1955. So here's the story about District 5. For a while they were talking, every time they talk about District 5 being in the temporary quarters it currently occupies, they said, District 5's always been in temporary quarters. I don't think so. But it started out in temporary quarters in the city stable. 1869, just 4 years after the Civil War, these were the city stables. This is Lynn Street, this is Oliver Street. This is a slaughterhouse here. There were other slaughterhouses in the area. There are stories about the offal and everything else coming out of the slaughterhouses, going down the streets, making it such a lovely place. But the police department stayed there for a long time. 1896, that's when they built the York Street Station. This is just a city directory from 1892, and it clearly states 5th District, southeast corner, Oliver and Lynn. There's a fire station that occupies this location now. It's a big one. It was the Fire Academy for a while, too. So District 5 wasn't Oliver and Lynn until 1896. They occupied the York Street Station from 96 to 1927, when District 5 was eliminated. There was an uproar. The citizens said, no, we need our District 5 back. The building was vacant for about 4 years. District 1, and this gets confusing, District 1 moved out of City Hall because the police department was growing, and District 1 moved into the York Street Station. At the same time, District 5 moved into the 10th District building because the 10th District had been empty since 1927. So District 5 was York Street from 96 to 27, didn't exist. Then 31 to 55, they were on Coleraine Avenue. Then when District 1 moved out of the York Street Station, District 5 moved back in for 2 years. So it was their home, but they hadn't been there for years. So they're in there temporarily until their new home at 1012 Ludlow Avenue was opened in 1957. This is the way it looked in the Cincinnati Enquirer just a few months before it opened. And this area here is now glassed in, but it was open, it was a breezeway. Again, it was designed to look like a park building. Because the park board and the police department really had a conflict. The police department said it's a great location, it's where we need to be. Parks said we don't want to lose the property. Well, at that time, the police department won. But when the place was opened, December 8th, 1957, this is the captain in charge of real estate in the police department. This is the architect. There is a time capsule in the cornerstone at the building in 1957. And in it, they put that 1957 Life magazine where Cincinnati Police Department is featured as the model police department for the city. So yes, 1012 Ludlow was a permanent home for District 5, and it was for 60 years. It was designed as a police station, and now it's going back to the park.
Is that time capsule, is it still there?
When I stopped there, I talked to the guys who were working there. He didn't know if it had been opened up or not. I don't know. That's a good question. Would love to be there when they open it up, if it hasn't been opened. When it was a police station, it had these bright aluminum sign here that said Cincinnati Police Department. I recently asked, I said, where is that? Can we have it? They haven't gotten back to me on that yet. So you've seen a lot of police stations, you haven't seen a lot of police officers. And I always like it when police officers are smiling because they have guns, they have sticks, and sometimes they have to stand in the snow when everybody's inside staying warm. This is the York Street Station. You can tell from the arch. It says the 1st District Police Station. So we know this is between 1931 and 1955 when District 1 was there. I got through it in less than an hour, Ray. Doing okay? If anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer them. Dan?
There is a very small police substation near where I work on Red Bank Road in the Walmart parking lot. And it's got to be the smallest substation. It can barely fit a desk. Do you know anything about that station?
That's the Fairfax Police Departments.
Oh, it is?
Yes, and when that place was built, Fairfax said, build us a police station here, and Walmart said, we're gonna have a police officer right here. They said, okay, so Walmart paid for that. And they've actually got license plate readers on the exit to that parking lot, so when you're going in and out of there, they can catch your license plate. And they catch thieves all the time. Paul?
In one of the slides, I talked about a special services unit. What is a special services unit?
It's a good question. The main function of special services is the traffic section. They're the experts in traffic reconstruction. There's a couple other units there. Honestly, I don't know. But yeah, the patrol function that's there is traffic. Anything else? Yes.
So you mentioned District X, I guess?
Station X.
The pump station's still there, you could have a picture of that, right?
In a longer program, I would.
Pardon?
I wanted to keep this program down to an hour.
That's just a cool story.
And actually Station X started in the basement of City Hall in 1931. And so we've got some photographs of that, some annual reports and some newspapers. I can talk to you more about that. I don't want to take too much of anybody else's time. So the term Station X moved from City Hall to Eden Park and then to Ezra Charles Drive.
Where did the term Station X come from?
It was just a cool name. On the original drawings, they're saying, what do you want to call it? I don't know. We'll just call it Station X for now. And it just sounded so cool. If you think about it, 1931, Prohibition is still in effect. There's gangsters going on. This was a quick response. They had two-way radios. That's when they inaugurated two-way radios. They had a motorcycle squad specifically stationed there at Station X. They had detectives stationed there, and they had patrolmen stationed there. So they'd get on the radio, they'd send these guys out. They were crime busters. And that lasted about a year and a half. Then they distributed them. Right after Prohibition died, that's when Station X stopped being a police station. But they had communications there until they went to Eden Park in the 1940s. Thanks a lot for coming, I appreciate it. Oh, one other thing. Oh, wait, there's more. So, there is a book that's a companion piece to this. You can get a copy of it here if you like. All proceeds from the sale tonight go to the Delhi Historical Society. They don't benefit me. If you like cop stories, you can, whoops, went to the wrong one again. This is a free ebook. You probably can't see it if you go online. Visit my website. Send me an email. I'll give you the code. You can read that ebook for free. It's just some cop stories with some good tales. I'm not Joseph Wambach, but I love his writing.